It's funny, the things you think define you. For me, it was always the music. The way a chord progression could tell a story words couldn't touch, the raw, buzzing energy of a small, packed club in Austin, the shared grin with Sam when we nailed a harmony. My name is Julian Vance, and for most of my 28 years, I was the songwriter, the lead vocalist, the beating heart, as Sam used to say, of a band that felt like my very bloodstream. We were on the cusp, always on the cusp, that fragile, exhilarating edge where dreams felt tangible, just beyond our reach but within sight. Sam was more than a bandmate. He was the brother I chose. We'd met in a dingy open mic night, two scrawny kids with cheap guitars and big ideas, and something just clicked. He had this incredible stage presence, a natural magnetism that drew people in, while I was happier tucked behind the mic, letting my lyrics do the heavy lifting. We complemented each other, like two halves of a whole, creating a sound that was uniquely ours, a blend of soulful indie rock with a raw, honest edge. Our early days were a beautiful mess of cramped apartments, ramen noodles, and endless hours poring over melodies and lyrics, chasing that elusive perfect sound. We shared everything, from bad hangovers to deep-seated fears about making it. Our band was our life, our identity, and our promise to each other. We called ourselves Discordant Harmony, a name that felt perfectly ironic and profound, capturing the beautiful chaos of our music and our lives. We truly believed we were unstoppable, two brothers with a shared vision, ready to take on the world. Austin was our cradle, nurturing our sound in smoky bars and late-night sessions, and we felt its vibrant pulse in every chord. Then Selena walked into our lives. She appeared like a mirage, sleek and sharp-edged against the backdrop of our usual dive bar gig. We were playing a new song, one I'd poured my soul into, about longing and the search for belonging. And afterwards, she found me at the bar, nursing a cheap beer. Her eyes, a striking shade of jade, held an intensity that was both intimidating and alluring. She introduced herself as Selena, a manager with a keen eye for raw talent and untapped potential. She spoke of brand development and market penetration in a language that was alien to our world of passion projects and artistic integrity, yet she also spoke of my lyrics with an insight that disarmed me. She said she saw the depth in my writing, the vulnerability that would resonate with millions. She understood, she claimed, the delicate balance between art and commerce, a balance we desperately needed to strike if we wanted to move beyond the Austin club circuit. I was instantly captivated. She wasn't like anyone we'd ever met in the industry. No greasy suits, no empty promises. She had an aura of confident capability, a fierce independence that I found incredibly attractive. She seemed to grasp my artistic vision in a way no one else had, articulating the unspoken feelings behind my music with chilling accuracy. She said my songs had soul, that they were unvarnished truth, and that was precisely what the world was craving. This was everything I'd ever wanted to hear. Sam, ever the pragmatist, was initially more cautious, but even he couldn't deny her impressive resume and her shrewd understanding of the business. She made us feel like she saw us, not just our potential, but our essence. We were just two guys, brimming with talent but lacking direction, and Selena, with her polished confidence and articulate vision, felt like the missing piece. She made us believe she was the key to unlocking our destiny. The early red flags were so subtle, so easily dismissed as just business or her way of doing things. Her magnetic charm had a sharp, almost cutting edge if you weren't careful. She had a way of dissecting people, not unkindly, but with a clinical precision that sometimes made my stomach clench. I remember a late-night call where she gently suggested a change to a lyric, something about broadening its appeal. I'd argued, instinctively, that it stripped the song of its specific ache, but she'd countered with a smile in her voice. Julian, darling, sometimes the most profound truth is in simplicity. Don't be afraid to let go of a little ego for the greater good of the art. Her words had a hypnotic quality, always persuasive, always making me feel like she was on my side, guiding me towards something bigger, something better. She started subtly, almost imperceptibly, reconfiguring the landscape of our band. She'd spend more one-on-one time with Sam, discussing his stage presence, his look, his interaction with the crowd. Sam has that undeniable star quality, she'd remark casually to me, a glint in her jade eyes. He's a born frontman, Julian. You're the architect, the emotional core. It's a perfect dynamic. At first, I nodded along, proud of Sam, proud of our dynamic. But slowly, the words began to chip away at something within me. Architect, emotional core. They sounded subsidiary, less central than frontman. Then came the refinements to my songwriting process. My songs, she insisted, were brilliant, but sometimes too raw, too personal, too niche. She'd suggest collaborating more closely with Sam on the lyrics to broaden the perspective, make it more universal. I resisted, of course. These were my babies, born from my deepest experiences. But her arguments were always so logical, so couched in what was best for the band, best for our future. She'd say, think bigger, Julian. Think global. Your art deserves that reach. And who was I to argue with someone so clearly dedicated to our success? Sam, for his part, seemed to embrace these suggestions, fueled by Selena's praise. He started offering more input, not just on the arrangement, which was his usual forte, but on the very heart of the lyrics. It felt like my vision was slowly being diluted, a vibrant watercolor becoming a muted pastel. I started to feel a growing distance from Sam, too. There were inside jokes between him and Selena, quick glances they'd exchanged that I wasn't privy to, meetings I somehow missed the memo for, phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. When I tried to talk to Sam about it, he'd dismiss my concerns with a laugh, saying, "You're overthinking it, man. Selena's just trying to whip us into shape. We need this." He seemed different, more confident, yes, but also more guarded. His usual easygoing nature was replaced by an edge I didn't recognize, especially when Selena was around. He started dressing differently, cultivating a more aggressive, edgy look that Selena curated. He seemed to preen under her attention, soaking up her every word. And I, the guy who wrote the songs, the guy who poured his heart onto the page, felt like I was slowly fading into the background, a shadow behind the burgeoning spotlight on Sam. My gut twisted with unease, a cold knot forming in my stomach that even the Austin sunshine couldn't warm. The psychological pressure escalated. Selena had this insidious way of making me question my own judgment, my own memory. She'd say, "We discussed this, Julian, don't you recall? You agreed to that change." And I'd rack my brain, trying to remember a conversation that simply hadn't happened, or at least not in the way she framed it. She often made me feel like I was forgetful, easily confused, or overly emotional. "You're an artist, Julian," she'd say with a sympathetic sigh, "a beautiful soul. Sometimes the business side of things can be overwhelming. Let me handle it. Just focus on your art." It was a subtle gaslighting, eroding my self-trust, making me doubt my own sanity. I remember one particularly jarring incident. We were in a demo session, and I'd just laid down a vocal track for a new song I was particularly proud of, a raw, almost desperate ballad. Selena listened, her expression unreadable, then turned to Sam. "Sam," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "that bridge would really shine with your powerful vocals taking the lead. Julian's delivery is beautiful, but it's almost too vulnerable. We need strength there." Sam, of course, readily agreed, already reaching for the mic. I felt a cold shock, like a bucket of ice water dumped over me. Too vulnerable? That was my strength, my signature. I tried to protest, to explain the emotional arc of the song, but Selena simply cut me off with a dismissive wave. "Julian," she said, her voice firm, "this is about impact. It's about creating a moment. Trust me on this." And Sam, my brother, my creative partner, just watched me, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher in his eyes. Guilt? Ambition? Both. He took the mic, and when he sang my bridge, with his powerful, confident voice, it did sound impactful. But it wasn't my song anymore. It was just a performance. I felt a piece of my soul being ripped out, replaced by a polished, manufactured version. The band, which had always felt like an extension of my identity, was becoming alien. I started having trouble sleeping. My mind raced with endless loops of conversations, trying to piece together where I was going wrong. My appetite disappeared, leaving me gaunt and restless. I'd walk the streets of Austin at night, the vibrant music scenes now feeling like a mockery of my internal discord. I tried to talk to other band members, our drummer, Maria, or our bassist, Leo, but Selena had isolated me so effectively. Any concerns I voiced were met with sympathetic head shakes and assurances that Selena knew what she was doing. Julian, man, you just gotta ride it out, Leo would say. She's a pro. Everyone gets their moment. But it felt like my moment was being systematically dismantled, piece by painful piece. Selena's manipulation grew bolder. She'd make decisions about our image, our marketing, even the track list for our upcoming debut album, without consulting me directly. When I questioned her, she'd turn it around, making me feel like I was being difficult, ungrateful, or obstructing the band's progress. You're sabotaging us, Julian, she once said, her voice dangerously quiet, just as we're about to break through. Is that what you want? To hold everyone back? I felt a crushing weight of guilt, despite knowing, deep down, that I was fighting for the very essence of what made us us. The band started rehearsing without me for certain sessions, claiming it was vocal rest for me or logistics. I'd show up and find them already having worked through new arrangements or song structures I hadn't approved, sometimes even new lyrics. Sam would explain them away, looking uncomfortable, saying Selena thought it would tighten things up. He was avoiding my gaze more and more, becoming an accomplished evasive artist. I was losing my voice, not just literally, but metaphorically. My confidence was in tatters, replaced by a constant hum of anxiety and self-doubt. I started believing the insidious narrative Selena was weaving, that I was too sensitive, too much in my head, too attached to my pure art to see the bigger picture. I was becoming a ghost in my own band, a shadow of the vibrant, passionate musician I once was. The climax, when it finally arrived, was brutal and swift, a lightning strike after a prolonged, suffocating storm. We were in the recording studio, the hallowed ground where our debut album was slowly, agonizingly, coming to life. The air was thick with a mixture of anticipation and frayed nerves. This was it, the culmination of years of dreaming, struggling, creating. I was supposed to be laying down a final vocal track for a song called Echoes in the Dark, a haunting ballad that felt profoundly personal, a lyrical journey through my own anxieties and hopes. I remember the studio engineer, a quiet, kind man named Mark, called me over to look at some revised sheet music. He was frowning slightly. Hey, Julian, he said, a little hesitantly. I just wanted to confirm these changes for Echoes. Selena sent over this new arrangement, and it's quite different. Also, the publishing info here looks a bit odd. My heart gave a little lurch, a familiar prickle of apprehension. Revised sheet music? I hadn't approved any revisions. Mark slid the paper across the console. My eyes fell on the title, Echoes in the Dark. And then, below it, in bold, undeniable print, Words and Music by Sam Miller. My vision blurred for a second. Words and Music by Sam? This was my song. Every single lyric, every single melody, had poured from my soul. I could remember the exact moment each line had formed, the precise feeling that had birthed it. My gaze dropped further. Below Sam's name, in small print, was the publisher's detail, Selena Vance Management. And then, her familiar, elegant signature. It hit me like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. It wasn't just a revision. It was a complete theft, a brazen erasure of my identity. My blood ran cold, then boiled with a furious, disbelieving heat. My hands trembled so violently I had to grip the edge of the console to steady myself. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. I turned slowly, my eyes scanning the control room. Sam was there, talking animatedly with Selena in a corner, their heads close. He had that new confident swagger, a smile on his face. Selena looked utterly composed, her jade eyes fixed on him, a faint, almost proprietorial smile playing on her lips. They looked like a unit, a conspiratorial pair, utterly separate from me. The realization slammed into me with crushing force. It wasn't just a subtle pushing aside. It was a planned, calculated execution. I walked towards them, the sheet music clutched in my hand like a weapon. Every step felt heavy, like wading through thick mud. The studio lights seemed to glare, the air suddenly suffocating. My voice, when I finally found it, was a raw whisper, barely audible over the low hum of the equipment. What is this? I asked, holding up the paper, my hand shaking so violently the page rattled. Selena turned, her expression initially one of cool, almost bored detachment. Her eyes flickered from my face to the sheet music, and a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk touched her lips. She didn't flinch. Sam, however, went rigid. His eyes darted to the music, then to me, a flash of something, panic? Crossing his face before he quickly masked it. Julian, darling, Selena said, her voice smooth as silk, utterly devoid of emotion. There's no need for dramatics. It's simply a strategic reallocation of credits. For the band's benefit. Strategic reallocation? My voice cracked, rising to a desperate shout. This is my song. Every word. Every note. You can't just steal it. Selena took a step closer, her voice dropping to a low, chilling tone, just for me. The industry wants a frontman, Julian. Sam sells records. You just feel. She punctuated the last word with a dismissive shrug, as if feeling was a trivial, inconvenient flaw. Her eyes, those cold jade eyes, held not an ounce of remorse, only a calculated certainty. It was an executive decision. I looked at Sam, my heart begging him to deny it, to stand up for me, for our shared history, for the truth. His face was a mask of conflicted emotions, guilt, ambition, shame, but he said nothing. He simply stood there, silent beside Selena, his silence a resounding confirmation of the deepest, most agonizing betrayal. His gaze slid away from mine, unable to meet it. That silence, that averted gaze, was the final nail in the coffin. The brother I chose, the man I poured my creative soul into, stood by as I was stripped bare. The world tilted. The studio, the instruments, the very air seemed to spin around me. A searing pain erupted in my chest, a physical agony so profound it stole my breath. It wasn't just the song, it was everything. Our history, our friendship, my identity. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed illusion Selena had built, with Sam's complicity, to elevate him and sideline me. The band, my purpose, my passion, it was all gone, evaporated in the cold, calculated words of a woman who saw my heart as a weakness and my brother as a commodity. I remember a metallic taste in my mouth, a ringing in my ears. I felt utterly, terrifyingly alone, a solitary figure in a room full of ghosts. I remember very little after that moment, only fragments. The blur of leaving the studio, the Austin streets a meaningless jumble of lights and noise. My legs felt like lead, my chest a hollow cavity where my heart used to be. I stumbled into my apartment, the one I'd shared with Sam for so long, now a desolate cavern. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I collapsed onto the floor, the sheet music still clutched in my hand, my body shaking uncontrollably. Tears came, a torrent of hot, raw grief that felt like it would tear me apart from the inside. It wasn't just tears for the betrayal, but for the loss of everything I thought I was. Julian Vance, the songwriter. Julian Vance, the frontman of Discordant Harmony. Julian Vance, Sam's brother. All of it shattered into a million irreparable pieces. For months, I was a ghost. I stopped answering calls, stopped going out. The vibrant Austin music scene, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cruel mockery. The guitar, my lifelong companion, lay untouched in its case, a silent accusation. My apartment became my prison. I ate sporadically, slept fitfully, if at all, plagued by nightmares of Selena's cold eyes and Sam's silent betrayal. I'd replay every interaction, every dismissed concern, every subtle slight, and the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with horrifying clarity. She hadn't just managed us. She had systematically deconstructed me, eroding my self-worth, making me doubt my talent, my instincts, my very reality. And Sam. Sam had chosen ambition over brotherhood, ego over integrity. The wound of his complicity festered, a poison in my soul. I lost myself completely. Who was I without the band? Without Sam? Without my songs being mine? The thought of writing, of singing, was anathema, a reminder of the raw, exposed nerve of my betrayal. My artistic soul felt ripped bare, left to bleed in the open. I was hollow, a shell of the person I once was. The joy, the passion, the very essence of my being, had been extinguished. But then, one impossibly quiet evening, something shifted. It wasn't a grand epiphany, more like a tiny, fragile spark in the vast darkness. I was sitting by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, and a faint melody, unbidden, whispered in my mind. It was melancholic, haunting, a pure expression of the grief I'd been drowning in. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I reached for my dusty acoustic guitar. My fingers felt clumsy, alien on the fretboard. I plucked a few chords, hesitant, almost afraid. The sound was raw, unpolished, imperfect, but it was mine. Slowly, painfully, words started to come. Not polished lyrics for a band, but fragmented thoughts, raw emotions, the messy truth of my collapse. I wrote about the pain, the betrayal, the crushing weight of deceit. I wrote about the silence of the friend who chose ambition, the cold calculations of the manipulator. I wrote about the gaping hole in my chest and the fragile hope that perhaps, just perhaps, something new could grow there. It was unfiltered, ugly even, but it was honest. It was my voice, resurrected from the ashes. That fragile spark slowly grew into a flicker, then a small flame. The writing became a lifeline, a way to process the trauma, to reclaim my narrative. It was terrifying, venturing out alone, but the alternative, remaining a ghost, was even more so. I made the agonizing decision to officially leave the band. It meant walking away from a name I'd built, from a dream I'd chased for years, but it also meant walking towards myself. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, severing the last ties to a painful past, but it was also the first true step towards liberation. I informed them in a cold email, devoid of emotion, because I had nothing left to give them. I left everything behind, the songs, the name, the memories, because they felt tainted. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I could not heal while tethered to the very source of my pain. The journey was long, arduous, and intensely solitary. I moved out of Austin for a while, needing a complete change of scenery, a place where no street corner held a memory, no bar echoed with a forgotten melody. I rented a small cabin in the Texas Hill Country, far from the hum of the city, and just wrote, and wrote, and wrote. It was a purging, a catharsis. The songs weren't for anyone else at first. They were just for me, a testament to my survival. They were raw, stripped down, infused with a vulnerability I'd once been told was a weakness, but which I now embraced as my greatest strength. Eventually, the urge to share them returned, but this time, it was different. There was no ambition for fame, no desire for external validation. It was simply an urge to connect, to tell my story, to put my authentic voice out into the world. I found a small independent label, run by people who genuinely cared about music, not just market share. I recorded my debut solo album, pouring every ounce of my heart and soul into each track. It was called Resurrection. When Resurrection was released, I braced myself for indifference, or worse, for comparisons to my old band. But what happened next was truly unexpected. The album resonated deeply. Critics praised its raw honesty, its poignant lyrics, its stripped-down beauty. My music, freed from the suffocating grip of manipulation, found its authentic voice, and in doing so, it found an audience that truly understood. They weren't looking for a frontman or a marketable asset. They were looking for truth, and I was finally able to give it to them. It's been a few years now. I've released 2 more albums, toured the country, and played to crowds that sing my lyrics back to me, lyrics that came from the deepest, most wounded parts of my soul. I found a peace I never thought possible. The pain of the past still lingers, a faint scar on my heart, a reminder of how easily trust can be broken and how cruelly ambition can twist human connection. I don't harbor hatred for Selena or Sam anymore. They taught me a brutal lesson, one that reshaped me, forcing me to find my own strength, my own voice, outside of any external validation. I learned that my art doesn't need a shrewd operator or a charismatic frontman to be heard. It just needs me, raw and unfiltered. Sometimes, I still hear about discordant harmony. They never quite reach the heights Selena promised them. Sam, I hear, struggles with the weight of the spotlight and the manufactured image. I don't wish them ill, but I feel no nostalgia, no longing. My path diverged, and I chose the harder, lonelier road, but it was the road that led me home, back to myself. My music now is pure. It's honest. It's me. And that, I've discovered, is more than enough. The harmony I found wasn't in a band or a manager or a brother. It was in the quiet, steady rhythm of my own heart, finally beating to its own true tune.